All right, so it seems like we are live now. Stephanie, are we good to go with the recording? All right.
Well, hey, I'm here.
Beautiful.
Yes, we are good to go. All right.
Thank you very much. All right, great to see you guys here. Today is going to be a little bit different. This is our 5th episode, as I just said, and we are going to be doing a live Q&A. So this session will go on for kind of as long as you guys dictate. If you guys have questions for us, shoot them our way, and we'll be happy to cover pretty much any topic that you guys want to touch on today. We do have a few things that we're going to touch on just briefly in the beginning, kind of some basic FAQ stuff. But then, yeah, we're going to kick it open to you guys, and whatever you want us to talk about, feel free to let us know. But yeah, so Stephanie, if you've got a couple questions for me, we'll start off.
I do. So these are just some questions that, talking to our customers, I feel like I get these questions a lot. So the first question that I get a lot is, what is the main difference between an email account for sending and an account login? Or like users, what's the difference between multiple email accounts and multiple users on an account?
Absolutely. So the main difference being probably price. Each team member, so each team member on the team tab is an independent user. They have their own login, password, and credentials to get into Reply, and then they can create their own content sequences, add contacts to those sequences, etc. These are going to be completely priced based off of whatever subscription that you're on. If you're on an individual tier and you add a new team member, it is functionally going to double your monthly or annual allotment. So for example, if you are on the $70 monthly tier, if you add a new user, you will be paying $140 a month moving forward. No discounts or anything like that. You can move up to different business tiers which provide discounts, but the system will not automatically do that for you. So it is very prescient to understand the difference between adding a completely new user and then adding a functional email address for your campaigns. Under settings and email accounts, each of the different email accounts here is used specifically for sending, and the pricing is a lot different. This does not grant access to your account. It simply allows you to send emails on behalf of the email address that you've added in here. So I could add any domain that I'd want from any name, and then I'd be able to send those emails, but that would not allow the individual that owns that email to enter my Reply account. They are completely different things. And the pricing for emails is beyond the initial 2 that you were afforded with your subscription. Everyone after that is $29 per month per slot that is being used. And that is going to be automated. You will also see little notifications when you try and add a newer email address beyond those initial 2.
And I think the big thing too is the big difference is, a lot of customers I speak to, they mean to add an email account, but they accidentally add a team member. So if you want to just add an additional email address for sending, make sure you do it in settings/email accounts. If you're looking to add a team member, you would go to the team tab in the black bar at the top of your screen and send an email invite. So those are the 2 big differences. So I think we have a question. Mm-hmm. About email accounts, which is awesome. Should we use our domain to send from Reply, or is it safer to purchase a new domain? I'm afraid of getting my domain blacklisted and seeing my emails going directly to spam. What do you recommend?
So fantastic question, and definitely something that you want to know, especially when you're first getting started. It is always safer to purchase an alternate domain if you can. Naturally, through time, and regardless of whether you're using a mass mailer or not, domains will have a natural degradation to them the more they're used. So eventually you are going to see some sort of backlash or negativity as far as reaching into spam filters or things like that. In order to kind of dilute that effect, especially if you are sending emails at a certain scale, pushing that backlash onto your subdomains is a great way to kind of keep your main domain active for as long as possible. One thing that a lot of people don't understand is if an email account individually gets blacklisted, that has repercussions beyond just sending emails, or it can anyway. In the beginning, not being able to send you emails out of your particular domain is kind of a pain in the butt, but you're still going to be able to have your website working and things like that. If you get into spam and then you continue sending in that same kind of capacity, it's no longer just going to affect your emails landing in spam. It's going to affect the ability of your potential clients or prospects being able to visit your website, how likely they are to appear, you are to appear in a search engine and things like that. The reputation just goes far beyond simply sending emails. So you do absolutely want to be careful. As long as you're following the rules and following warm-up practices, you can use your main domain. It's absolutely fine. But subdomains are just a way to kind of, again, dilute that negative backlash and keep your domain running as pristinely as possible for as long as possible.
And I think, there are things that you can do with your main domain if you're not looking to purchase a subdomain at the moment. So maybe if your volumes are going to be a bit lower at the beginning, you can still use your regular domain, but there are certain kind of rules that you want to make sure that you're following. And I think we talked about this a bit in our best practices in terms of content session that we did, but, paying attention to the amount of links that you have in your emails. If you have, 4 hyperlinks in the body of your email plus link tracking turned on, odds are your emails are going to start going to a promotions tab or a junk folder. So paying attention to things like the amount of links, paying attention to your domain settings like SPF, DKIM records for sending. We probably don't have time to get into all of that right now, but we do have people on our team on the deliverability side who can really work with you to set that up just to maintain the integrity of your domain. So whether it's subdomain or your primary domain, we do have people that can help you with that. So like I said, you can use your primary domain, just make sure that you are following those deliverability best practices along the way.
Yeah, and one more thing to add to all of this is when I say that there's natural kind of degradation, I don't imply that it's going to happen overnight or within the first month that you're actively using a domain. You will get a lot of mileage out of your emails as long as you are just using proper warm-up practices and things like that. You only ever really run into trouble if you've created a brand new domain like the morning, and then a couple of hours later you try to send hundreds of emails. That's probably going to get you blacklisted very quickly. So as long as you're avoiding just overtly breaking the spam rules, you're going to be fine for a long time. But that being said, you still want to use those subdomains if possible and just try to kind of, again, dilute the potential backlash.
So we do have a couple of other questions. How do you know if your emails are going into spam? This is a really good question, and I can speak to this because it happened to me. So I'll tell you a story. A few years ago, I was sending out emails. I had really great intentions. I was trying to send out as many resources as I could to some new customers. So I was sending an email with about 5 links, and it had link tracking turned on because I wanted to see who was clicking on the links. What I noticed was, from one week to the next, my replies weren't coming in anymore. My open rate went down really, really fast. It went from typically maybe 40% from week to week to about 5% the next week. So I did run some back-end tests, and I found out that the emails that I was sending for anyone who was using Gmail as their email service provider, they were going right to a promotions tab. Anyone who was using Microsoft, it was going right to their junk folders. So they weren't landing in that primary inbox, which is why the open rates plummeted. And so I wasn't getting any replies. So one surefire way to know if this is happening, like I said, if you see your open rate from week to week, it's sitting about 60%, and then it drops all of a sudden to about 4 or 5%, that's a sure giveaway that there could be an issue with your deliverability. There are some tests that you can run that will tell you where your emails are going or where they're landing. Glock apps, Glock, is a great tool that you can use. And like I said, it will let you know where your emails are landing. So what I did to remedy that, I took out a whole bunch of the links. I started sending 2 links in the emails. I kept link tracking turned on, but just 2 links. And then after that, over a bit of time, I did see my open rates go up and I did see more replies coming in.
Sorry, I'm just writing in Glock apps, and Mail Tester is also another great option to help check your backend domain reputation. So let me just type that into the chat there just so everyone has the names. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for taking that one. Another cool way to just figure out if you are finding your emails in spam is if you go to the People tab, and you're going to see a couple of columns: delivered, opens, views, and replies. If you're seeing your emails are being delivered, but your opens are pretty much nothing, there's no number, just complete blanks for the vast majority of your contacts, especially if you saw any metrics at all prior to this point, that's a pretty good indicator that something's changed. And Glock apps and Mail Tester will be able to kind of let you know if you're in any sort of blacklisting trouble, let you know if there are settings that do need to be improved. And so Mail Tester does let you run a couple of tests for free every single day. And then there are just even more higher tiers that you can subscribe to and get just more and more information to help get you out of those potential holes. But yeah, looking at your general open rates on the main sequence page, if you're noticing any dips, as well as checking the people page and the open column will be a good signifier of where your emails are landing.
All right. How long should I warm up the new domain?
So another great question. Typically, we have a very strict structure we recommend. You want to start with around 50 emails per day. And then you can increase that every other day by 5 to 15 emails until you go to a number that you are comfortable with. We have people that send 400 emails per day and it works completely fine. It just takes a lot of time to kind of build your way up to that point. And when I say every other day, it's actually a little bit more nuanced than that. So in your email account settings, under safety settings, you can adjust the total number per day here. So for instance, I'm starting at 50. I don't want to increase this to 60 just on a whim because 24 hours has passed. I only want to increase this number if I've actually hit that limit the previous day. So if this says 50 out of 50, tomorrow I will increase it to maybe 55 or 60. And then if it shows 60 out of 60, I'll increase it to 70. You only want to make those increases if you've hit your max the previous day. If you're just arbitrarily increasing your limit, you're kind of missing the point of the whole warm-up process. And it's about creating a natural progression. You want that nice incline as opposed to erratic spikes. The erratic spikes in behavior are what sets off email providers, and they're what trigger you eventually getting blacklisted.
And I've seen customers who use Gmail, for example, as their ESP, and they go from 0 to 400 in one day and nothing happens. I've seen customers go from 0 emails a day to, maybe 150, and they get red flagged by Google. So they do have an algorithm which detects abnormal sending patterns. So if you go from 0 to 400, sometimes you will get caught by that algorithm, but sometimes you won't. So just to be on the safe side, we always recommend warming up your email account. The last thing that you want to happen is to, we just talked about deliverability issues, but you also don't want to be potentially suspended by your email service provider for up to 48 hours. That could cause havoc on your email account. So warming up your email account, extremely important. Another thing to keep in mind as you warm up your email account, building the reputation of your email address and your domain for sending. Things like open rates, how many people are opening your emails, how many people are replying to your emails, how many people are opting out, are all things that are taken into consideration while warming up your email accounts. So, here at Reply, if any of our colleagues are warming up their email accounts, they'll send emails to, people on our team, maybe some friends, maybe some family. And just in the subject line saying, hey, can you open and reply to this email and not mark it as spam? You know, send a couple emails back and forth. It can be gibberish if you want. But as long as you are getting those opens and those replies as you're warming up that email address, that is key as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a good point. It brings up another thing that I want to talk about, just in that same vein. So a lot of people will worry about bounces and how that affects your email reputation long term. While it will, you don't want to be sending emails to invalid addresses. Another thing that actually can have a large impact that people forget is simply sending emails to addresses that don't respond. While they may not bounce, you're still creating a reputation of sending emails of inactivity. And anytime you're creating a pattern, will set off eventually alarms from the email provider. So if you become known for sending emails to anybody and anyone, regardless of whether they respond or not, eventually that's going to catch up to you. So you want to make sure that your lists are as pristine as possible. You want to check on the integrity of your lists before just kind of blasting them out there to make sure that you're at least going to get some type of traction, as opposed to just sending your emails out into the void and hoping for the best. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that you want to really kind of take into consideration. Bounces are one of them, those back end settings, and your warm up process is absolutely another, as well as just making sure that people are engaging with you to some capacity.
I have another question. Can I purchase a domain from a reseller? You absolutely can. Is it possible to check if your domain is blacklisted on a third-party website? So a few minutes ago, Josh had mentioned Mail Tester, and he mentioned it in the chat. So with Mail Tester, when you do run a test, it will tell you if your email address or domain has landed on any blacklists or spam lists, and it will actually list the spam list for you. So it does do a really good overall check, not only of the copy of your email, but also of your domain settings and your current sending reputation.
Absolutely. We're getting a few questions in the actual Q&A section here. So I think, David, we will touch on your question in a moment. I just want to get on with a couple of these ones up top here. I was informed that we will have manual full/semi tasks for emails in Q4 of 2020. Will that happen soon? I'm not entirely sure what this is referring to. We have automated and manual options currently. So if you want to be a little bit more specific as to the exact tasks that you're talking about, LinkedIn, I know, is semi-automated right now, and we do have call functionality. So if you just want to kind of elaborate a little bit more, I can maybe answer your question a little bit better there. Do signature links count towards spam triggering?
Yes, yes, they do.
Yeah, yes, they do. Yeah, good question. So anytime you include an HTML factor in your messages, you are impacting your ability to land in the primary inbox folder of your recipients. Signatures, they're slightly unique in the sense that they're kind of always automated and they're kind of always HTML based, but the point still stands. Anytime that you're adding in anything that isn't plain text, think of it as a 0.5% negative score to your chances of landing in the primary inbox folder. That's just a random number. It's not actually statistically correct. I'm just using it for reference. So if you use one link in your email, that's negligible. You're probably still going to land in the primary inbox folder. You don't have to worry about it. If you add 10 of them, you've essentially just given yourself a 5% shot in the foot that you're going to land in spam. So you always want to pick and choose your spots where you're including these things. A logo to your company is probably going to be all right. But if you're including a logo and then like a bunch of other links as well that aren't exactly necessary, you may want to rethink your strategy as far as what things to include and what not.
I think for me, like after I ran into that issue a few years ago with my emails, landing in promotions tabs or junk folders, I've been really on top of my content to make sure that doesn't happen again. So what I have done is my general rule of thumb for my account and for what I'm sending out is I have one image and one link in my email signature, and then no more than 2 links in the content of the emails. I see a lot, I'm sure Josh, you do too. I see a lot of signatures across accounts. We're in accounts every day. And I've seen signatures that have, the company website, the email address is hyperlinked, Twitter is hyperlinked, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. There's about 6 of them. And so what I always say is pick the 2 that you think you would get the most value or the biggest return on. If having a link to your company in your signature where you can then see who's clicking and being redirected, that's going to bring you more value, pick that one. Your email address, if someone clicks reply on an email, they have your email address, so it doesn't need to be hyperlinked. So just, if you're going to have links in your email signature, just pick the ones that you think would help you or your business the most.
Yeah, and to that same point, this also ties into your call to action. You don't want to dilute your call to action by giving them a ton of options. You often run into people kind of not choosing any because there's no clear direction of what they're supposed to do with this message, especially if you're doing cold outreach. These are strangers. If you just kind of throw a bunch of options at them and they don't know who you are, more likely than not, they're going to choose to ignore you. So by having just a ton of different links in your signature, you're essentially pointing at 5 different things as opposed to saying, hey, I just want you to do this for me. You're much more likely to get the engagement that you're looking for if you have one thing that you're asking as opposed to many.
Yeah. And just think about it, when people are reading their emails, they're scanning through their emails. If you have, 7 links in your email plus 4 in your email signature, no one is going to take the time to be redirected to all of them. They may click on one and that's it. So, like Josh said, and like I said, pick the 1 or 2 links that's going to bring the most value to you and your business, and just keep it focused on that.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if someone just walked up to you on the street and then asked you 5 questions. You're already put off by the fact that this is a stranger coming to you and then asking you something at all, let alone a number of different things. So you're much more likely to get what you're looking for if you focus on one aspect at a time, as opposed to just kind of throwing everything out there and hoping for the best.
Okay. We have a question from Fernando. Can Reply bring leads and contacts from LinkedIn using the Chrome extension to HubSpot?
So directly from the extension into HubSpot, the answer is no. Currently, the Chrome extension exclusively brings leads from LinkedIn or a connected CRM to Reply. You can then kind of piggyback that through a native integration and move them into HubSpot. But directly from the Chrome extension, the answer is no. We also do have, I believe it was last week or the session before that, we did do a full deep dive into all of the aspects of multi-channel, including the Chrome extension, and we did show how that works. So we may be able to link that a little bit later, and I'd be happy to reference that if you want to dive more into it.
Okay. I'm going to hop back to the chat for a quick question. So I think this is kind of going back to deliverability, which seems to be a hot topic today. David asks, how does this relate to using another program for marketing emails? Do you recommend an email platform for newsletter sending? So I don't necessarily have a recommendation for newsletter sending. Customers that I speak to, a lot of them will connect, maybe MailChimp or Constant Contact with Reply and integrate it through Zapier. Those are the ones I hear a lot about. With the more marketing style platforms like a MailChimp or Constant Contact, you have the ability to send up to 10,000 emails per day. With those platforms, they are not connecting directly to your email account. They're sending from their own servers, which could result in those emails going directly to a promotions tab or a junk folder. So that's one of the things that you want to look out for. If you're going to be using a platform like that, the deliverability may not be as optimal.
Yeah, the main difference between Reply and other platforms that perform a similar function is how we send the emails. We pride ourselves on deliverability. So by using your own unique domain and email account, we're not just mimicking organic send styles, we are literally sending them from your account. That's why we have systems in place like delay between each email sent, a maximum number of emails that's relatively low in comparison to some of those other marketing tools, just because we don't want to get you in a situation that you don't want to be in. We still do have the options to create those HTML based messages, and we do have a system in place where you can continue sending emails regardless of response. So catering to that marketing style, if you are sending a monthly newsletter, by all means, you can create that in reply, and we are capable of doing that for you. The main thing that you want to keep in mind, though, is you don't have to worry about domain reputation when it comes to things like a MailChimp. They are sending all the emails on their behalf, so you're not getting any sort of negativity. If you're going to use reply for a marketing style campaign, you want to make sure that the people that you're reaching out to have already opted in. If they've opted in and you have some sort of established relationship, you're totally fine sending them those cyclical emails because the reputation's already there. They've already engaged with you to some capacity, and you're not going to be at any threat of having that kind of fall back down on you. If you're trying to send a marketing style campaign to complete strangers, you've never spoken to these people before, they have no idea who you are, that's probably not going to end the way you want it to. So it's all about just making sure you understand what your goal is for that sequence, looking at your audience, and then using the settings to your advantage. So again, we can do marketing style campaigns, but if you're looking just for pure quantity, something like a MailChimp or a SendGrid is probably the better way to go.
Yeah. And, and we've talked about this before, the whole point of our platform is for your emails to appear personal. So you can definitely kind of, use it in a marketing sense, but have just more personal, warm type emails that you're sending out, as opposed to kind of like the really fancy HTML style, kind of in your face marketing type emails that you would send with maybe a MailChimp.
Absolutely. We're getting quite a few here. Stephanie, hit me with another one.
All right. Okay. Let's go back to the Q&A. From Anna. I generate my Outbox report in the morning, which is normally a pretty high number, and at the end of my day to see a total sent, but that number is much lower. Why?
So there could be a number of reasons for that. That's probably more of a question for support directly. If you feel that your limits aren't being hit and it's not a reason that is clearly visible to you, that could be something unique to the account or something in your particular settings. What I can say in general is that the Outbox is a estimate based on the settings when you initially ran the test. So if you make any changes at all, the numbers that you received when you ran the report are no longer valid, and you have to generate a new one. So it also doesn't take into account if your email disconnects. It's like not just suddenly going to change the number on its own. So unfortunately, I can't dive too deeply into that. But as a rule of thumb, it's not a hard and fast number. Your Outbox can show 10 emails per day, but if your settings in your email accounts is set to 200 or 400, and you see that the numbers are accurate here, this is the area that you should be focusing more on as opposed to the Outbox. The Outbox is not a guarantee. It is, again, just an estimate. So if you do have more specifics, I do recommend reaching out to our support team. They should be able to figure out what's going wrong there.
All right. Okay, let's take a look here. I noticed when creating a sequence, it goes from day 1, day 3, day 7, day 14, 25, and so on. Are these the recommended frequency from sending emails? And then, looks like there's a bit of a chat going on there. So the default settings in terms of the delay when you are creating a sequence, so like the day 1, day 2, day 3, day 7, for example, those are based on best practices. It was mentioned in the chat that if you kind of like spread out the later steps, your prospects might think you might wither away. The reason that we recommend kind of spacing out the later steps is, if the first 3 steps of your campaign, for example, the emails have been relatively close together, you just want to kind of spread them out by a few extra days on the back half of the campaign, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to kind of wither away or eventually stop reaching out to them. One thing that we always recommend, for people in your campaigns who, are not engaging with that specific campaign, that you really filter those people out and nurture those contacts or try some sort of re-engagement with them. So maybe, if the people in the campaign didn't reply to those emails, if that was your call to action, that you're taking those people and, creating a new campaign a few weeks down the road and, re-nurturing them, re-engaging them.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a point of diminishing returns. If you've sent them 10 emails and they haven't engaged with you, taking a little break and trying to change your tactics for another round down the line is absolutely viable. So persistence is key. These people don't know who you are, and you need to make sure that your message is getting across. So we don't recommend sending one email every 2 months, but you do generally want to space the emails out enough where you are being persistent, but you're not being annoying. So typically what I do is I'll have my first string of 2 to 3 emails be within the first week and a half of each other. So all emails within the first like 9 or 10 days. So I'm building a little bit of momentum. I've given them I've introduced myself. I haven't been overtly pushy. I've now broken the ice. I'm going to give them a follow-up with more specifics. How am I going to help you? How am I going to do the things that I'm claiming that I can do for you? And then in my third email, I'm typically going to do something like answer pricing questions or typical FAQs, things that come up generally on sales calls that you have. You just want to kind of get ahead of the curve there. And by keeping those closely spaced together, you're creating a momentum and you're building essentially a story where you've got all of your bases covered, and you want that information delivered in a timely manner so that they don't forget about you. After that, I will typically wait maybe another week before sending the next email, because I don't want to finish one story, don't give them an opportunity to kind of stew on it, and then immediately hop into the next. So it's a kind of give and take relationship. It's going to be dependent on your audience at the end of the day. So there's no hard and fast rule here, but persistence is key, and you don't want to be annoying. So try to find a balance that meets both of those criteria.
Okay, should we really pay attention to the email quality check service? For example, the word sales is not recommended. Should we avoid the word at all cost? Yes, I recommend paying attention to the quality check. In regards to the spam word count, which Ellen, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, the word sales, you see that in your spam word count. It really depends on what that gauge is showing you. So right now what Josh is showing us is that it's green. So there's one spam word in there. My advice to our customers is, if it's green, keep the word call in the email. Odds are that one spam word is not going to trigger your emails either not getting delivered or ending up in a promotions or junk folder. If you do start to see that spam word count is moving more towards red, so if you're at a place where you have 10 spam words, that's when I would recommend hopping into the content and just switching out a few of those words. The thing with the spam words is that list, it's always getting bigger. People are using more and more words, and email filters and service providers are, adding more to that list every day. Like I said, pay attention to that metric. If it's green, you're okay. I would say once it gets to yellow and then definitely red, just go back, take a look at that content and consider switching out a few of those words.
Yeah, another thing to note is that the metric system here is comparative in nature. So call, for instance, is a pretty inoffensive word. The reason why it's triggered as a spam word is because everyone almost that's ever sent a sales email has asked for a quick call. So it's more about the overusage rather than any deliverability issue. So you can still send the email with the words there. It's just a way of us trying to give you a visible metric to quantify whether or not someone's going to engage with you. This isn't hard and fast. It's not going to guarantee one way or another that they're going to receive a response or not. Just how closely in line you are with what is working with the platform and in the cold email space. So yeah, you want to keep them as low as possible generally, but if you feel that call is not going to affect whether someone responds to you or not, you're probably all right.
I mean, there are some obvious words that you want to avoid,
Yeah.
things like discount, free, 100%
Yeah.
off, things like that.
Yeah. The overtly
So,
salesy tactics, I
yeah,
think, have come and gone.
yeah,
So those are the ones that really you don't want to use. Again, like if you're literally sending an email to let people know about a discount for something, that's fine. It makes sense within context. Just try not to overuse those sort of terms, because people will clue in to the automated nature of your messages. And if you are trying to build conversations and relationships, you want to make the email sound as conversational as possible. And people don't typically spew the word free, sale, discount
100.
over and over again in conversation.
All right. So Josh, I actually have a question. Again, this is another question that I get a lot from customers when we have meetings and calls and things like that. Can you explain a bit more in depth throttling?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm asking you because you explain it so much better than I do. So
So in general, this is the Cliff Notes version. Whichever number that you see between these two limits, so your max number of emails per day and max daily prospects throttling, whichever one is lower is going to be the functional limit for that campaign. So as a rule of thumb, you either want to keep both of them the same or just make the number of emails per day the lower number. That is going to be the hard cutoff for that particular sequence. Essentially what it does is it's just a way to help prioritize task types and email steps for the sequences on the back end. It's still going to send first steps and email follow-ups in tandem, with a focus on first steps primarily, but just it's a way to help prioritize how it's organizing those emails and when they're going out. So essentially, it'll queue a certain number of emails on the back end that'll get them ready for sending the next day. It's very complicated, and at the end of the day, you guys are going to care about how many emails will go out from the sequence. So just make sure it's not lower than your max emails per day, and generally just keep it the same if you're not entirely sure what you should set it to.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna toggle back into the Q&A. All right. Earlier on, when I was actively using reply before the holiday season, we were not able to have a step in the sequence where we would be prompted within the email composer and a very rough draft of what it should include to go ahead and compose the actual email and actually click send to send it, as opposed to an automated chain of emails or steps within the sequence. So I'm assuming this is referring to kind of automatic versus manual email sends.
So yeah, the short answer is we do now have that. So you can toggle between automatic and manual. Most people won't use manual simply because it kind of defies the nature of the system. But if you do want a more kind of hands-on approach, this will wait until you actually click the send option and get those emails out yourself. It still comes fully with all the variables and options there. So you can fully curate your messaging, and then wait until the opportune moment to kick those out. But yeah, so when you're creating the step, you just have to hit that little toggle there, and you can switch between automatic and manual message types.
And I noticed that a lot of SDRs on our team, for example, when I look at their campaigns, they will use a manual email, and it's that first email that goes out, and they'll just really personalize that email, and then they'll kind of create the rest of the steps as automatic emails to go out. So you do have that option too.
Yeah, and you can also customize the messages independently in the preview tab. You will have a full list of your contacts that are in the sequence on the left here, and then you can fully customize on an individual basis. So for instance, if you wanted to change this to hey instead of hi, only this individual would get this version of it, where everyone else would default to whatever's in the steps. And that would be denoted by this little backwards arrow here. So if you don't like what you've adjusted or can't remember what you changed, you can just hit that little toggle and then it will revert back to whatever's in the steps.
All right. Any concerns when hitting the same domain? For example, loading up everyone or all employees of an xyz.com. So reaching out to everyone at the same company. I think that if you were going to reach out to more than one person at the same company, it should be highly targeted. Maybe you're reaching out to people in the marketing department or HR or something like that. I wouldn't recommend reaching out to every person at that specific domain, because you probably are going to get a lot of people who that email doesn't apply to them. They're either maybe going to ignore the email, they might mark it as spam because it's not important to them, they may not open it. I would say if you're going to reach out, again, if you're going to reach out to multiple people at the same company or domain, have it very specialized and very targeted. And we recommend that for any campaign that you're creating. So whether it's people at the same company or just people at different companies, that you do have a really targeted list and you're really hitting up people who would be interested in the information that you're setting or that falls in their area of responsibility.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had clients just spam the entire directory from some type of company. You end up stepping on your own toes. You may have hit someone of import first and they're interested in what you've got to say. They genuinely think that this message was sent to them. And then someone else forwards them the exact same email 30 minutes later. So you're kind of getting your own messages in the way of each other. So yeah, targeting is always the best way to go. If you are going to reach that full directory, then just spread it out. Don't do it all in a single batch. I've had people that create full campaigns that are dedicated to a single company. That typically doesn't work. So yeah, it's just about kind of strategizing, hit on as many fronts as possible, and diversify the potential domains that you're reaching out to. Because at the end of the day, if you're reaching out to everyone at the same company, unless you're trying to sell each of those individuals a unique item, something specifically for them, they're probably not, they don't all need that same email. So hitting the people that can make those decisions is probably your best bet.
All right. How many numbers of emails should I send to start? I believe you mentioned 50. Should the throttling limit be set at 50 as well? So we did talk about starting your emails at 50 emails per day. In this instance, Josh, can you go back to email account settings? Mm-hmm. Because this is really important when warming up your email account. And a lot of people set the campaign limits at 50 emails per day. What you should be doing is setting your email account setting limits at 50 per day. This setting right here, so if you have it set to 50 per day in your email account settings, this is going to override any limit you have in your campaigns. It's important to set it here also because if you keep this at 200, but maybe you have 4 campaigns running and each of them are set at 50 per day, it's still going to send out 200 emails a day from that email address. So always come into your email account settings, lower this to 50, and then slowly warm it up there. Like I said, this will override any of your campaign settings, and this will be the max emails that will go out per email account.
Yeah, correct. So it's in settings, email accounts, in under safety settings. This is the one that you want to pay the most attention to. You could leave, if you're only running one sequence, you can just leave that at 400 max. And as long as this is set to 50, you're still totally fine. So yeah, settings, email accounts is the limit that you definitely want to keep warmed up, where the sequence limit kind of takes a back seat to this main one.
Yeah. So I feel like there's been a lot of questions about deliverability today, which is very important. You obviously want your emails to be delivered. You want them to land right in someone's inbox. You don't want any deliverability issues or kind of domain reputation issues with your email account. I think, Josh, we should do a whole session on deliverability one day.
Yeah, we were actually talking about it a few days ago. Yeah. So we might bring in a fresh new face if she's comfortable with it to kind of walk you through.
We haven't asked her yet because she's on vacation. So
Maybe she'll watch this and be surprised.
Okay, so right now, so there are no more questions right now. So if you guys have more questions, keep typing them in either in the chat or in the Q&A section. I have another question that I hear a lot, and this is in regards to Team Edition. So maybe we can talk for a couple minutes about Team Edition, why you would want to enable Team Edition. But the question that I get most of the time is, what is the benefit of having either public mode or private mode?
Yes. So essentially, it's going to come down to your general workflow and what type of visibility you want your team members to have. For people that don't know, what Team Edition is it's a UI change. Public mode will allow everyone visibility into everyone else's content. So right now, I'm just looking at my sequences. I can change that to all, and then I can see everyone on my team and all of the sequences that they've run. I can even duplicate sequences and then add them to my own account. This will duplicate all of the settings and the content. It will not copy the people. So essentially, this will allow everyone to work much more seamlessly together. If you don't want people to have any insight into other content, so for example, if you're running an agency using Reply, working for different clients and having different accounts for each of them, you would probably want those to be siloed if they do have access themselves, just so that they don't look into anybody else's personal information and things like that. Generally, it is beneficial for teams to have it turned on, simply because it's easier to share everything and just understand what's working and what's not, as opposed to everyone kind of working in isolation and leaving it up to separate meetings to understand kind of the do's and don'ts of your campaigns. It also gives you the option to pause people automatically from the same domain across team members. So if you're not on the Team Edition, either public or private mode, you won't have access to that. So essentially what it does is if someone responds, say I'm reaching out to the McDonald's directory, someone reaches out and responds to my campaign, but Stephanie's campaign is still running people with that same domain, it'll automatically pause the other people with that domain until I manually reactivate them, just again to avoid stepping on any toes and make sure one conversation is gone through to its end, as opposed to starting a bunch at the same time.
Right. Okay, so I'm hopping over into the Q&A. I've put contacts in a sequence and they have received and opened the first couple of emails. Then on the next step, that email bounces. Am I to assume that email is now inactive, or have they unsubscribed without it being generated? This can be a bit tricky with bounces. If they did unsubscribe to the email that you sent via reply, so whether in your account settings, if you're using unsubscribe via plain text or using an unsubscribe link, if they did unsubscribe, they would have an opt-out status applied to them. So you would see it in your account. You would be able to see, okay, this person opted out. It doesn't necessarily mean that the email is inactive. It could mean that the email that you sent, maybe it's a third email, maybe there was something in that email that triggered a specific spam filter that they have on their email account or with their ESP. I think the best thing to do whenever you have an email that bounces is always making sure that you are opening that kind of bounce back mail or daemon at google.com or whatever the case may be, and really looking for that specific reason code, because it will tell you in that bounce message.
Yeah, there's not much more to kind of say in that respect. Another common reason for that is someone manually marked you as spam between emails without actually opting out. So essentially, they've just hit the spam button in their own email account. And usually, if you do check the bounce message, it will say that this email was blocked. So it's the unfortunate truth, the unfortunate reality of the email game. Some people are not going to like what you have to say. So it's essentially unavoidable, but at scale, it's not too worrisome.
Okay, I'm sending something in the chat right now, but I do have a question here. This morning, my Outbox showed that my account had sent over 100 emails prior to 8 a.m., even though I have my schedule set to start at 8 p.m. and end at 5 p.m. How come this happened, and how do I avoid this? I'm assuming you mean that you had your schedule to start at 8 a.m. and end at 5 p.m. Like Josh mentioned before, the Outbox is kind of a rough estimate as to when those emails are going to send, how many are going to be sent per day. What I would do is, go into your sequence, go to the people tab and, click on a contact. If you open up their history, you can see when the emails were sent. And again, if you do notice that that's happening in the Outbox, or if you notice that when you're looking at your people tab and you see, okay, this was sent at, 6 a.m., my schedule doesn't open till 8, I would definitely open a live chat with our support team.
Yeah, there are actually, it's not a common issue, but sometimes the reporting and the time zone that you're sending the emails don't actually align. So the reporting is showing you when the emails were sent in a completely different time zone. So it looks like they were sent out of your window, but they actually were sent on time. So before you do go to support, I would actually look in your sent folder in your actual email inbox and just look there to determine when the emails actually went out. You don't have to look at all of them. You can kind of just pick the first one. And if that was out of the appropriate ranges, go forward with the support ticket. But it could be just a little bit of a discrepancy between the time zones. So it doesn't happen often, but yeah, check the email first.
Okay. There are no more open questions in the Q&A. The chat is looking good. Josh, are there any questions that you get from customers a lot that maybe you think would be good to kind of, walk through with some people that are on our call today?
I don't think we've got anything that we haven't already covered. Mainly it's about initial setup with the email accounts and Warmup. Alan, I did see that you mentioned the content, and Stephanie did write back to you. We did do a full session on the email content, and we will be kind of rehashing some of our older streams. We have new people coming in all the time, so we're essentially going to do a rotation. So if we don't cover everything today, we are going to be going back to basic setup. We are going to do another one on email practices. And as more and more features come through onto Reply, we will probably have dedicated forums for those as well. But yeah, I think we've covered over pretty much everything that I normally hear. We've got a couple of things coming in last minute. And here I thought we weren't going to get very many questions.
Would you ever buy an email list, or should I build my own? Oh, this is a question that we get a lot. So thank you for this one. You can buy an email list. That is fine. The one thing I would recommend though, and again, this ties back to deliverability, is always make sure that if you're buying a lead list, that you are validating the emails that you get. A lot of times I've spoken to a lot of customers who they bought a lead list and they were told that these are valid email addresses, and then they enter them into a campaign and they get, a 30% bounce rate for those emails that were apparently valid. So yeah, you can purchase a list. That's totally fine. Just make sure those are valid email addresses before you add them into your Reply account, before you start sending emails to them. And again, when you're purchasing that lead list, make sure that when you take that list of contacts, that you are putting them in very tailored and segmented campaigns. So, if you have a list, maybe take out, HR managers or marketing directors and put them in a very tailored campaign. Don't just take a purchase list of 5,000 people and put them in a very generic campaign. So always make sure they're validated, and really pay attention to the content that you're sending to them.
Yeah, you also, you get what you pay for. So if you're like, you can go to the most reputable company in the world, and if you just buy their most basic lead generation list, it's probably not going to be the best quality. So if possible, verify as much as you can and try to curate your own list as much as possible. I do understand that scale tends to get in the way of more manually curated lists. But you tend to get better results if you can guarantee that the emails are going to go through, as opposed to just buying something that someone says is good. To that point, we do have a marketplace where we've kind of listed all of the partners that we have worked with in the past that we believe are reputable. So this is a pretty decent place to start as far as lead generation goes.
All right, so I think we may have time for one more question. It's from Bruce. Will you show how to use filters to select people from a campaign to be exported or for additional actions? So maybe like a re-nurturing sequence, for example. So I think we have a couple minutes. We can quickly show our filters.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, and I feel a sneeze coming on. I will try my best to not make noise. But essentially, the add filter option will allow you to create a number of logic rules, and then we will pull a list that meets all of the specified criteria. And the options are quite extensive. We have all of our metric systems, even some kind of options when they've last been created or interacted with. We also have any fields that you are manually bringing in. So if you want to kind of segment your list based on location data. And then we also have options for interaction types. So if you want to see people that have engaged in a specific way, you can look for that as well, or exclude them. We do have a true and false option as well. And then lastly, we would be utilizing our custom fields. So anytime that you have a field that you want to work with that isn't part of our default set, you can add in the custom field at any point, and then you'll be able to filter by the specific information in there. The only thing that I recommend you avoid is adding in multiple fields that are looking for the same core information. So for example, if you have two filters here, both with score, and you're looking for two different things, it's highly unlikely and probably impossible that both of these are true. So your list that it's going to come back is going to be 0 because no one meets both of the options. So you want to make sure that you don't have any sort of conflicting properties when you're setting up your filters.
And Josh, if really quickly, can you just show how you can maybe move people that are in a specific filter to a campaign or export that list, or you can even do like a bulk blacklist, for example. So,
So I'll just put opens one or more. I'll also show you guys how to save it. Apply will create the filter for you temporarily, but then once you move pages, it'll go away. Saving the filter will be available for you forever in the little more drop-down menu here. So I've searched for opens one or more. So we have 302 people in this account that have opened one or more times. I can then select all in the list, and then I can move them to the sequence of my choice. And then you'll get a little bit of a diagnostic of how many people were moved and if people were exempted from that. Typically, it means they are either already in the campaign that you're trying to move them to or opted out or blacklisted, which prevents them from being interacted with.
And you can also export this list of contacts as well. So you can see what Josh, if you just go to that more drop down, you can export to a CSV. And then if you click that, it's going to prompt you just for basic fields or all fields. I always do all fields whenever I'm doing an export. So right now, as you can see, that export is now going to be available in your notifications up at the top right corner by your login. And then you can just download the CSV file. So right now, Josh is showing you on the people tab of the account. So this is everyone in the account, regardless of the campaign or sequence that they're in. You can also, create these filters, export, move them across campaigns within the sequence itself. There is a people tab within the sequence, and you could do it there as well. Whenever you save a filter, whether it's on the campaign or on the main people page like Josh is showing you right now, it will be saved across all of your account campaigns in your account.
And good point on that. They'll be saved across all of the campaigns in your account, but this opens filter, for instance, will not be available to my other team members. It is unique for me. So if they do want to have access to that, they would have to kind of recreate their own. In those instances, you would probably want to do lists, which are functionally filters, but that you can share. and that you can kind of add and subtract to manually. And the options are the exact same. Lists are not tied to campaigns. Lists are purely for organizational purposes. You would then have to look at a list and then move them to the sequence of your choice. Again, they are not tied in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Well, we just hit 2 o'clock. I know that there's a couple more questions that we didn't get to. You can always reach out to our support team via live chat with those questions. They'd be more than happy to answer them for you, or you can email me, Stephanie@reply.io, or Joshua@reply.io. There was one last thing in the Q&A. Just about a link to the previous recordings. You can find all of our recordings of all of our live sessions on Reply's YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube, search reply.io, when you get to the reply.io page, just click on videos and they will all be there for you.
Yes, absolutely. And Alan, I can answer this one super fast. We don't put in email addresses if you are looking at the Chrome extension. If we can't validate it, we're not going to give you an email. We'd rather leave it blank than give you a bunch of potential bounces. So that's why you may see people that don't ever pop up. But yeah, with that, we will be holding another live Q&A session. I think this one went very well. Thank you all for sticking with us to the end. And yeah, we will be hosting another session in a couple of weeks. We hope to see you guys there. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us and we will do what we can.
Thanks, guys. Bye.